Welcome. This is our masterclass session for the Permaculture Education Institute, and this is our 56th masterclass. So I don't do them every month. So that means I've been doing it for quite a while, these sessions. And typically the masterclass sessions emerge from questions that people have asked or ideas that have surfaced. And so I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to share this particular topic with you. So I'm Morag Gamble. For those of you who haven't met me already, I know that there's many of you in the audience today who are deeply part of the Permaculture Education Institute. So hello to you as well. So the topic that we're exploring today is mums make amazing permaculture educators. Now, this is quite a departure from, masterclass about soils or food forests, but we are part of the Permaculture Education Institute. And so I really want to do a bit of a deep dive into what makes, firstly, a really great permaculture educator, and why in particular I really want to uplift mums in this. Now, I have to say that it's probably taken me a while to come around to talk about mums, because it's a very kind of mumsy thing to talk about, isn't it? But I really want to talk about this because I feel that there's something hugely valuable and maybe unseen, undervalued, unrecognized in what mums bring into the education space. And so while this is particularly described as mums, there are people I know who are in this audience who aren't mums, and the kind of things that we're talking about are also about, anyone can be doing this. But I did just want to land the conversation and say, good on you, mums, go for it, mums, we can do it, mums. This is, it's that sort of the cheer squad for the mums. And I want to thank to my daughter who's here in the background helping with the tech. Maya, you might see her there. So thank you for being here. I know you left a jazz night down in Canberra to come and join us, so thank you for that. And I also would like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and pay my respects to elders past and present. And if you would like to open up the chat and let us know where you're calling in from, that would be absolutely fantastic. And also feel free to use the chat, which you can find down below, to do maybe active note-taking, drop in questions, thoughts, responses about various things. So let me just get going here. So I did want to talk about this topic around mums because I am a mum myself. I've been a mum for 18 years, and it's deeply influenced how I have shown up as an educator. I was a permaculture educator before I became a mother, but I would actually like to recognise that it has been a deeply informed experience of becoming deeply impactful experience of becoming a mother that has informed everything that I've done, including my work life, my teaching life, and how I show up in communities. And I did also just want to uplift my own mum. So there's my gorgeous mum there. And this is me when I was, a few years old. And I really wanted to acknowledge my mum, but also mums everywhere, for really creating the context within which learning can take place, where inspiration can unfold, where your spark is recognised and you are uplifted. And so mums everywhere are our first teachers and create the context and learning for where we grow and become who we are today. And I also really want to say thanks to Maya, who's journeyed with me a lot over the years, and from traveling through Uganda and Kenya and across the world, and together learning. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to explore the relationship, I suppose, that emerges in this way. But why this topic? I mean, I think what I see everywhere, I work with women around the world, and I see mothers who are out creating these learning environments, who are doing it, often in unseen ways, in small micro ways in their communities everywhere, really quietly often, not yelling from the top of the social media or whatever about all the things that they're doing, but they're quietly everywhere doing this work. And I think that it's an essential role of an educator, and it's also an incredibly powerful one. We often think when it's unseen or small or quiet that it has no power. But I would like to suggest that in actual fact, this rich, deep, connected type of education that happens from people to people, from mothers to children to communities, it's a myceliating type of education that's happening everywhere, and it is insanely powerful. And so I want to flip the narrative we have often that, often we feel like as mothers that perhaps we're feeling a bit undervalued, or we might lack confidence, have the typical imposter syndrome. Maybe we feel like as mothers too, we might have lost ground while we're raising children in terms of creating work opportunities in our career, or perhaps we feel a tension between our lives at home and our lives at work, or what are the various societal expectations or perceptions that we hold about ourselves. Sometimes there's like deep guilt about spending too much time at work and not spending much time as a mother, or vice versa. We have all these contradictions because as mothers we're told, as girls we're told you can do anything, you can hold a career, you can do this, you can do that, and there's all these things layered on us. So we often have a lot of stereotypes and confused identities. But what I really want to uplift is this fact that together, when we think about how we can show up as permaculture educators, we need to bring all of the things that being a mother can that show up in our own personalities, in our own experiences. So what does it mean to become a fabulous permaculture educator? What does it take? And so the rest of this session, I'd like to really kind of explore some of those qualities that I see, particularly in mothers, but in many other people too, that I really value when I see people holding programs and classes and really making a difference. And I think, as I said too before, that I think mums are just absolutely natural educators, because from the moment that you hold your child in your arms, there is this innate role that you take on. And so how can we bring this sort of innate tending to those who are around us into our permaculture education space? And I think that part of that too is knowing that learning happens everywhere all the time. Sometimes when we think about creating permaculture classes and programs, we think, okay, we've got to set up a curriculum, we've got to set this program, we've got to deliver stuff to people. Whereas what I think is really innate in this way of learning, or this role of educator, is knowing that learning happens everywhere all the time. It could be while you're eating, it could be while you're walking, it could be while you're just cleaning the dishes at the end of the day. Learning and conversation happens, and it happens everywhere. And in this role too, I noticed that mums actually are hugely natural leaders, and sometimes undervalue their role as leaders. But I would say that the potential to really step up and speak up and host and lead, often it can be from behind or from the side or around the edge or creating the context. It might take a shift in how we think of what a leader is and what the shape leadership takes. But it's so powerful, this kind of leadership. So what is this? I mean, it's a kind of nurturing leadership. There's a kind of a sense of deep holding multiple dimensions simultaneously, being able to organize multiple things, having deep empathy and being in service. I think that's a really big part of it as well. So there's a different kind of leadership. And I think whatever it is that we've come to before we enter into motherhood. Whatever experience and knowledge that we may have PhDs, we might have been heads of organizations, but when we bring all of those different things and wrap it around with our leadership and then start to share this knowledge and experience into the world through a lens of permaculture education, it's insane what it is, what we can create, what the possibilities are. So I wanted to share with you a number of different experiences that I've had, but also what I've noticed around the world in different communities, and the different qualities that I think are essential in this process. So instead of, as I said before, thinking about creating programs, what I really value in education is this potential for us to create learning environments, spaces which are just open to the possibilities that learning can happen. So it might be sort of an integrated garden, an open space, a place where people can play and explore themselves. And through that process of actually engaging, unpack the learning that's there, rather than delivering a session about something and abouting about everything and then going and having to play with it later. Being engaged in these learning environments, and really to value home. Now, this is a eco village in Scotland. It's Findhorn, and this is perhaps one of the most extraordinary examples of a learning environment. It's where it's an eco village, it's a learning community, there's the community garden spaces, there's multiple ages and cultures that meet together in this space. But the holding space, the container of this is home. And I really want to articulate this notion of home as being an important part, that what we tend in our spaces where we live and we raise our families are powerful places where so much learning can take place. And I also want to uplift too how I've noticed the willingness to share abundantly the knowledge that we have, that mothers are natural, as I said, mothers are natural teachers and mothers are natural leaders, and the willingness to share and uplift others is enormously powerful. I think another really important dimension of this too is the possibilities and the capacity to hold diversity. It's this art of hosting that we have, of inviting different people into our spaces, different, as I said just before, different cultures and different ages and different abilities, and to be able to be sensitive and really got our radars open to see who needs what and what space and what do we need to tend to, rather than just focusing on a particular delivery of a content or getting across a message. It's actually really putting out our radar to see where everyone is in that space and to hold a learning conversation. And I, as I said before, I mean, I don't think this is particularly necessarily only what mothers do, but I notice as a mother that I'm so much more aware of this than I was before I was a mother, because I needed to be so much more aware of where my children are, or who are the other people in the room who have needs that might not be met, or is there something that I see in someone's face or in a reaction, or reading the non-verbals, I think is really, so that kind of emotional intelligence of being able to read the room in a way that helps us to tend to that. So I think this concept of like really thinking about the spaces in which we're learning, the way in which we create the different kind of timing or spaciousness of the learning, perhaps thinking about different concepts, maybe rather than thinking about a big picture idea, like really bring it back into what's happening right here in this place, and what's the nuance of we're talking about water. What is the water that's happening in this particular landscape, rather than talking about a big idea that can be copied somewhere else. It's like really bringing things home into that visual, tangible, understandable way. And so the structure that we use to design our programs might be something quite different. And I absolutely love the way that it helps us to be quite innovative, to be creative and responsive to the design of the learning experiences that we create, because it's really noticing who's there, what's the space, what's going on, how does that look, rather than just going, okay, I'm going to teach composting today, so I bring out my composting file and this is what it's about, or I'm going to teach design today and this is what I'm going to do. Really to be flexible, to notice how to design that. And this is part of the principles of permaculture, is like paying attention to the patterns and the details. And this is essentially applying this to designing our learning environment, so that there is possibilities for that, to see the bigger picture, but then to bring it down into how we make sense of that in the local, in the things that are around us, in the relationships that we're forming in and around our communities. And so it's kind of like a sense that we're thinking of everything and everyone all the time, and how do we bring that together? And not in an overwhelming way, but just, as I said, being, having our radar really fine-tuned. And I think, as particularly when we have younger children, we become experts at designing programs that are really focusing on the slow and small solutions. And because this is something that's doable, it's tangible, it's understandable, it's able to be tackled by small hands and small people. And I think that by focusing on this dimension of it, and if we take this concept and ripple it out through many of the different ways that we're learning in all different contexts, we could really make sense of a lot more in a beautiful way, I think, because there's the possibility to get overwhelmed sometimes with big ideas, and we have massive problems that we're facing in the world. How are we to deal with that? When we bring the concepts down into small and slow solutions that we have agency over, and that we can involve those who are important to us in this as well, it gives us a way to tackle the big picture, but through something very accessible. And Nora Bateson talks about this a lot. And some of you have heard me talk about her before. I interviewed on the Permaculture Festival of Ideas, and we were reading some things out of her book, Combining. And what I really like about she says many things, but one of the things that I really like about what she says is that the message is in the meta. And this is that small and slow solutions, that there might be really big concepts that we're talking about, the meta, but it's in the how and the way that you do that. It's, as I said right at the very beginning, the context that you set up, the container for the learning. It could be in the picnic in the park, to the sitting under the tree, to the walking along the river, to the harvesting the food to take to the kitchen. The messages of the learning come through that, rather than just telling the message. And so the context makes all the difference. And I have really learnt the lesson of creating spacious learning environments as a mother. One of the things I noticed that, I would used to spend, a 2-week intensive program teaching every day, every night, from early in the morning till late at night, and expecting everyone else to follow that pattern. And there was absolutely no way that I could continue that. I tried. I managed to continue it, Maya. When you were little, you would be in a sling and I'd be carrying you around teaching these programs, doing gardening, and you were helping me. And then Hugh came along and he was off on the side, probably digging in the sand pit, and you were helping me to explain chickens. And then Monty came along, and that was it. There was absolutely no way I could manage to continue at that intensity to be able to teach. And I realized at that point that probably most other people weren't coping particularly well either. And so really leaning into what it meant to be I don't know, responsive to that, I decided that spacious learning environments were probably one of the most healthy ways to learn, one of the ways that we could learn something, then go away and try it, and then, you know, allow that to sort of seep into our souls, and then come back for some more. And really, there's no rush. Like, why are we in a hurry to learn this? We need to really go deeper rather than faster. And so this spaciousness in learning. And so, those of you who are part of the Permaculture Educators Program, there is no time limit to the way we learn. And if questions arise, we'll tackle those. And there's, it's a learning community as opposed to a course. And I've really taken a lot of the lessons from my experience as a mother and really trying to create possibilities for other people who they may also be mothers, or they may be caring for anyone in their family, or tending to their own personal needs. And this spaciousness is important. It's a human quality that's important. I think too, being a mother and noticing how my children learn most deeply, it reminded me about the importance of discovery, rather than informing and telling and saying, okay, this is the information you need, and giving all the information and saying, okay, here it is what you need to know. And this is what happens, I guess, at school a lot. You get told what you need to learn, and then you get tested on that, and then you're meant to know it. But this process of discovery, of opening up questions and opening up possibilities, and going into environments where there can be a discovery that happens, and then creating space to explore what the lessons learned. And so shifting around how you might teach, rather than going, okay, we're going to go out to the forest and you will notice this, this, and this. Look out for these things. Here's the boxes to tick that you've done that. Rather than going out with sort of an open-mindedness and an awareness of the whole, and then to bring that back together later on. And also really creating spaces where you can just give things a go. It doesn't matter if you fluff things up, that it's a space to try stuff out, to experiment. I remember there was a garden at Northey Street City Farm that we were getting started, and we were trying to imagine how we might create a no-dig garden, for example. And every single person in this group had a different idea about how a no-dig garden should go. And so rather than arguing about which way we should do it, we created a mandala garden, and each different idea had a different segment of the mandala garden. And so we all just had a go. And I love this idea of creating spaces where we can play. So this playfulness, I think, is really important. It's this kind of discovery thinking as well, rather than going, okay, so here is how we're going to do a garden. Now follow these steps, do exactly as I say, and that's it. So really exploring that and embedding playfulness in so many different ways. When we were talking about rewilding, and in a children's workshop that I hosted, one of the ideas that we came up with was, the seed balls. And so the balls, we mixed them with, there was compost and some clay and a mixture of beautiful wild seeds. And what we did was we got the kids to get the slingshots, and then we was like slingshotting these out around. So it was so much fun. It was so playful. But the big lesson around this was around rewilding and regenerating the landscape and bringing back diversity. So there was a lot of really serious lessons, but embedded in that playfulness. And I think the more that we can engage in that, and also satisfy our inner child of our need to step out of being, the serious teacher as well, and really, having opportunities to experience. One of the things that we know about learning too is that, we only explore and go deeper into the things that we've had exposure to. So how do we create as much different possibilities to experience different ways of doing things, to have so creating these learning. I think one of the things that is a big part of this is creating learning gardens, places to come and play, to come and connect, to come and experience, to come and explore different ideas, and to use that as like an active research place. Another thing that I think mothers are particularly good at is this, this deep listening and the patience to listen. We hosted a session at Crystal Waters, the Eco Village I live. It was with a group of kids who were mostly homeschooled, I think, and they were out of school because they were deep thinkers and imaginative, and so we just put out a whole lot of stuff for them. There was boxes and bamboo and leaves and materials, and they went off into the landscape to find other things, and they basically designed a city, and each of them was creating different businesses or organizations or different elements of the city. They'd all kind of talk together, and then they went and created their different hubs, and then to go and to listen to the story of what this collection of boxes meant, and then to bring together and to join people together in that active listening and the learning that takes place in the articulation of an idea is so important. So creating that possibility too. So learning together, I think, is absolutely essential as well. This, creating the spaces where we can come together and learn, where we have a deep sense of cultivating community, and because it's shifting from that me to the we, that we're in this together, and from me to the we to the world. We are the world in our own every little cell of a community is part of this bigger picture, and that we are making huge changes every time we interact in this. And I think one of the things too is this, creating these learning groups can unlock a lot of potential, a lot of confidence, a lot of skills. Like every single person has knowledge and skills and ideas and possibilities. And often we can feel alone if we're, particularly in Western communities where, people are in their isolated homes and spaces, to create the opportunities for people to come together. And this project here is an amazing I don't know if Lillian's here today, but Lillian is a counsellor, and she runs a program in Kenya connecting young women, young mothers together, teaching permaculture and really helping to connect the whole bioregion of community of women together. And the possibilities that's unlocked is absolutely extraordinary. Some of you may have heard of the stories through the Ethos Foundation. I really encourage you to get involved in the work that we do. And I can see too, I think I saw Roland is here. Hi, Roland. There's a number of people here who are part of the different programs you run. So I'd love to hear your experience as we go further into this session as well. Something else that I think mothers are particularly good at, and there's one particular mother that I really take my hat off to with this, and that's Stephanie Hafferty. And she talks a lot. She's written about this. She writes it. She writes in magazines and books, and she makes videos about this. It's how to make a little go a long way. She was a single mum, and her whole thing around gardening and permaculture education is about how you can create abundance and how you can create beauty from simple ingredients and a simple garden. And so this is Stephanie. She's based in Wales, and I highly recommend you to check out her books and her blogs and her articles in magazines. She writes regularly in that too. But I think, this capacity to make the most of what you have. So this is Jennifer. She's blurring because she's always moving so fast. Jennifer teaches permaculture, but she also teaches young women about personal hygiene and well-being. She makes washable sanitary pads, and she's taught other women how to make washable sanitary pads. And she lives in Kenya, in the western parts of Kenya. And she's extraordinary in the way that she inspires so many other young women. She's created the Permaculture Women's Club, the Permaculture Youth Club. She goes and talks to young girls across her region about how to take care of themselves, how they can save their money by not buying pads and using the washable pads, and the impact that that's having is extraordinary. And I think this idea too of finding the possibilities in your local context is really important. Like, we don't have to have a big center and a big learning place. It could just be in our garden. And most of the things that we want to be able to share about permaculture, we can just find right where we are, in our home, in our garden, out in the street, down the road. We don't have to have a whole lot of stuff to be able to be amazing permaculture educators or to create beautiful feasts. And that's what Stephanie teaches us. That's what Jennifer teaches us. And this is what I found too in community gardens and even in my home garden, that I didn't need to create a particular training garden. My own home garden was the venue for running camps and classes and courses and workshops and events of all different kinds. It's just where I live. And so how can you find the possibilities in your local context? And I think too, something that I've noticed as well a lot is that as my children grew, the types of education programs that I ran changed. So before, as I was saying, before I became a mother, I was running like highly intensive programs that were really a struggle for pretty much anyone who was doing them, including me. And then once I had children, they became more spacious, and there were perma kids classes. We ran a permaculture, what was it, like a permaculture play group, I guess you'd call it. It was called the Carousel. It was at a carousel building. We had permaculture gardens around it, and cooking up, and the whole place was infused with permaculture. And then, as the children got a bit older, we started, things like Perma Youth, and then there's the Ethos Fellowship, and the programs keep evolving and changing. And I see this a lot with mothers. So this is at Glasbren in Wales, and they have young children, and they're running these beautiful forest garden programs and young steward programs, little stewards, I think they call it. And it's beautiful to see. And I think if we could design the programs that we run that just wrap around where we are right now, it makes us less needing to separate home from work, where it becomes this one and the same, that we can hold together this identity as an educator and as a mother and as someone who's working and generating income. And by opening up spaces that have this flexibility so that others can be involved too, who have children or who have other needs that need to be met, and being inclusive of that really does unlock a huge amount of possibility. And I think too that focusing on the intergenerational potential that's there. So this is a group of grandmothers in around Kakamega in Kenya. And they also run beautiful programs for at the local schools with young mothers groups, with the kids clubs. And it's this possibility of uplifting women of all different ages. And what they do too is they have a savings and loans fund. So they're uplifting, one of the members to run a chicken program and helping them get that started. And then there's another group that are running a vegetable gardening program, and so they'll uplift that. And then there's this revolving loan fund that keeps going around, and it's supporting younger women, it's supporting the grandmothers of the group, and it's really engaging the young children to be involved. And so this is like a intergenerational learning community that is unfolding and learning. And it's not a formal class, it's a series of different actions that happen by learning and sharing together in this way. And it's really creating conditions for people to thrive, like really putting that at the center. Like, how can we create conditions for people in our community to thrive? How can we create the conditions for life to thrive, the diversity of all life to thrive in our communities? And also checking in too. And, this is Lila June Johnson, who joined me in the International Permaculture Festival of Ideas. And one of the things that she was talking about in this was this idea of checking in, saying, how can I help, if at all? And she was particularly talking about this when we are interacting with Indigenous communities, rather than just going and say, oh, I've got a great idea that can, barreling on in. But I think this type of question is something we can hold wherever we are, because often as an educator or as a designer, we can think, oh, we've got a great solution for you. So really just taking that moment to step back and think about, is this helping? Do you need my help? And as a mother too, you want to often step in and help, but also recognizing, oh, actually, if I step back, there's a possibility for finding solutions and being a supporter, but not necessarily the driver. And I also just, from an Indigenous perspective too, really wanted to uplift the work of Dominic Chen, who's recently put out her Growing on Country information about how permaculture educators can be respectful of Indigenous cultures here in Australia, and how to approach and uplift in the work that we do. So Dom is a mum who lives not far from here, and I deeply value her advice on how to be respectful of culture and country here. So if you haven't seen her program yet, Growing on Country, I'll make sure that I put a link in the email that follows up about this, because it's really extraordinary. So it's a course that's available now, and I would recommend that anyone who's in Australia particularly to either access that, share it, and get involved in the work that she's doing. And I think too, really thinking about culture and country and customs. Back in the early 1990s, I spent a lot of time up in the Himalayas, and I was deeply, I was young, I was an impressionable young woman, and I noticed the strength of the customs of the women, the mothers, the grandmothers in this place. And it has stayed with me ever since, this notion of women's circles coming together in customary clothes, in the particular songs that were sung, with particular actions in the field, or particular ways of cooking and food that were at different times. And I feel somewhat disconnected with customs as an Australian, or don't recognise particularly the customs that are here. But I think that I want to learn more about this, and I want to understand it more. And so I wonder whether, any of you have particular customs that are of your culture that are related to this, that can inform the way that you engage in education in permaculture. I saw it so strongly there, and somehow I feel a bit of a vacuum where I am in my culture, but maybe it's just because I'm so immersed in it that I don't see it. But I would love to hear anyone's impressions on that. But I think what I do notice a lot is this possibility of the mothers that I see in permaculture, running permaculture programs, really tending to well-being in the courses, to finding ways of creating circles where conversations can happen, where you can deepen into the space, where you can step out of the formal learning and come into where the informal learning spaces, and to really create spaces for chat. This, it's not frivolous. It's absolutely deep, essential learning and ways that we can integrate and find the nuances of culture, of place, of experience, and deepen and broaden our possibilities. And this, I think this is from you, Roland, but this creating safe spaces where mothers and their children can learn is absolutely important. The possibilities are often, and I hear this quite a lot, that people say, oh, I really wanted to do a permaculture course, but I couldn't because I had young children, or I really wanted to do a permaculture course because I had to take care of these things because we take care as mothers. Like this is often our roles, and a home front to be taking care, to tending. So how can we create places where it's a safe place to come as a woman, as a mother, as a safe place to bring our children, so the children are cared for and tended. And so really paying attention as an organizer to those things. I don't know how many conferences and events that I would have loved to have gone to while I had young children, but they just were so unfriendly. They were so not safe for me to take a family to. And not only that, I would feel a little bit like, it's not your role to bring children into this space. Children don't belong in this space. So I really want to make sure that we create spaces where it is welcoming, where it is safe, and where it does uplift women to be involved. And, people care is a big part of permaculture. As you know, earth care, people care, fair share. So how can we weave this into the design of the programs that we run? And, whether it might be integrating, swims down in the local river or walks in nature or, hosting beautiful shared meals together where we feel nourished and, the foods come from the garden, directly from the garden and onto the plate. And perhaps it's creating spaces within it for times to rest. I've talked before about these, mad courses that I used to run. There was no time to rest. It was from dusk till dawn. There was things going on. Sorry, from dawn till dusk, things going on. So, how can we integrate these times for rest and renewal and places that nourish us to be able to continue? I think that's important. And to connect. So often the possibilities of us to be able to create spaces where our children can connect with each other, where families can connect and really start to find each other in that. Oops, don't know what's going on there. Went the wrong way. But I think too, one of the things that I have become far more attuned to is noticing sparks. So this is my daughter, and I would often watch her for when I would see there's kind of a sparkle in her eye. And I do it with all of my children, like where I would see if they would engage in something where they would sparkle or where they would look a bit dull. And that would be such a key indicator for me about when something was switched on, when the mind was activated, the body was activated, the heart was activated. And so I watch for this now everywhere. I don't think I'd quite noticed it before. Whereas being so tuned into the non-verbals, and so noticing that and then investing in that, investing time, energy, mentoring, support, whatever you can to be able to nourish those sparks, I think is so important. This is Josiane, who was absolutely enthusiastic about, she came involved in permaculture, and then she was she was keen in photography, and she ended up winning the Perma Youth Photography Prize, which she then put the money back into going to the studio to recording a song. And so this, it builds on itself. So really paying attention to that. And building trust. So this is Brenda. I don't know if Brenda's here as part of the group too. Brenda's up in Kitgorm, one of the Perma Youth leaders there. And she's creating this permaculture centre, which is really building trust among the young community there to keep coming along, to learning, to engage in this process. But I think, one of the big things too that I notice, as well as building trust, is a sense of engaging your power with others. And really helping others to see their power rather than power over. Rather that sort of like, I'm the head, I'm the leader, I'm the knowledgeable person, I'm the expert, and all pay attention and listen up and do it this way. It's this power with and standing beside and uplifting, and this intense courage that I see in so many people when that happens. And it's so incredibly powerful, the difference that this makes. So this idea of uplifting other women, Roland, here's your mum. Uplifting other women. Your mum, Roland, uplifts other women in terms of, they make the washable sanitary pads. They went and did some training together on making cook bags, and learned from Jennifer, who I mentioned earlier. And each of these women are uplifting other women and uplifting other mothers and uplifting other young women. So, mothers supporting other mothers and recognizing what needs and are there and how to support each other in doing that. So I think just some of the things I wanted to mention was like really recognizing the leadership that's there in the mothers, supporting that, leading with this loving care, really using all of our emotions. Like often we don't use that word love very much in terms of teaching, and showing this sort of deep care. So really leading with love, tending to the context, creating the learning context, the learning environments, the spaces within which this emergence can happen, and tending to process as well, rather than just the information. Like, how does that learning take place? So this is Luby McNamara, who's a brilliant permaculture educator who really tends to the process of how people learn together, and has also been part of creating a series of Mother Nature cards and learning resources, and really focusing on mothers as natural leaders. So I'll also link you to her work as well. And tending to community. So the community being the context, community being the learning environment, and it's that sense of it being more than just me going to learn something and doing it by myself, but actually creating the community where that learning can happen. Because if you're all uplifting together, there's a shift that can happen, a transformational change that can happen when we learn together. And really focusing on the relationships rather than the parts or just the individual people, but what's going on in between and what's happening between people, between generations, between you and the place, between you and the learning and the process. And so it's a systems approach. It's a holistic approach. And to celebrate, oh my gosh, to really notice and celebrate the joy of learning together. So there's some of the key words that I noticed when I was thinking about mothers as educators and the amazing things that mothers do. It's like really leaning into intuition and the patience and the active listening, empathy, understanding, the consistency and humility, and the being motivating, supportive, uplifting, adaptable, flexible, courageous, and really, I've got double intuition there. So obviously that's important. Being really, focusing on resilience and creativity and enthusiasm, deeply in communication with one another and tuning in, having a deep cultural awareness and sensitivity, fostering a sense of community, and really being heart-centered. And these were some of the things that I thought really became far more evident, particularly for me as a mother. So before we go into some discussions for a few moments, I just want to let you know that our next masterclass is coming up on the 2nd of November, and this will be about rewilding and permaculture. Thank you to anyone who was able to donate for coming to today. We always send 100% to communities that we work with via the charity that we run called the Ethos Foundation. And don't forget that I host a podcast called Sense Making the Changing World, which Maya helps me to edit. And this is full too of mothers who speak up about the work they're doing. And I've mentioned some of these people. I mentioned Stephanie Hafdy and Luby McNamara, but also Poppy Akoch is a new mother. So you can check out that one. And also our Permaculture Life YouTube channel has a lot of resources. You'll see a number of the films there that have involved my family and other people's families in it. And at the moment, I'm actually calling out to you all for suggestions on things that you'd like me to include in future YouTube series. I'm about to dive in and create a whole new series. And also just to remind anyone who's not part of our course already that we do have a whole lot of different permaculture courses for gardeners, designers, and teachers. And actually, on Monday, I'm starting a brand new 5-week course called Teach Permaculture, which is an amazing program designed to actually help you to design a permaculture program that's going to meet the needs of the people that you want to work with in the context you want to work with, and bring all of your skills and experience. But we also run that course as a spacious, as long as you need course, and you can start that any day. So that's the Permaculture Educators Program. And if you wanted to ask me any questions about those programs, either feel free to email me or can scan this little code here and it takes you to where you can dive in and have a chat one-to-one with me. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Maya, for helping behind the scenes. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.